Family Ties was the iconic 1980s TV sitcom.
In so many ways, it embodies the pathologies, the themes, the metaphors that were the 80s.
The show charmed audiences, boosted ratings for NBC, and created a national hero out of a boy with a briefcase.
Alex P. Keaton here.
There was just something about that kid in that role.
When you talked about Family Ties, you said, oh, did you see what Alex said last night? Did you see what Alex did?
Over the course of its 7-year run, Family Ties helped influence how we viewed ourselves.
I think Meredith and I were held up as paragons of American parenthood.
And what we aspired to be.
We watch something like that in an instructive kind of way, too. Say, look, how are they doing it?
This is the story of the Keatons. This is the story of Family Ties. By the mid-1980s, the ratings for Family Ties had gained momentum, and the show's lead character, Alex P. Keaton, was a cultural phenomenon in America.
An age of kind of rampant, sometimes naive idealism had given way to an age of rampant, sometimes naive materialism. And this show comes on just at the right time.
You've got a copy of the Fortune 500 in your wallet?
No, I wish. I only have the top 25 in my wallet. I keep the complete list under my pillow.
Alex P. Keaton was a perfect face for what would years later come to the political slogan, compassionate conservatism.
I was shocked at the reaction to Alex because, in my mind, these were character liabilities, that this was a young man so focused on success, conservative, and the mail immediately starts coming in how much they respect this kid from his peers.
I get letters from a lot. Surprisingly, it struck a vein of this conservative wave in kids today.
And so people did start to recognize themselves in that kid.
I've got my finger on the pulse of the contemporary American teenager.
Here's the important thing about Alex P. Keaton, and I think the people who really watched the show took from it. When push came to shove, he always made the choice of the heart, not the head.
The road to bringing Alex P. Keaton and his family into the hearts and homes of 1980s America began years earlier with the adventures of a self-proclaimed hippie and college dropout named Gary David Goldberg. Born in Brooklyn in 1944, Goldberg left New York after high school to travel and soak up 1960s counterculture. In 1972, he settled in California with his wife Diana.
I had never graduated college, and I was back in school, a small school, San Diego State, because Diana, my wife, was on her way to get her master's degree, and I was tagging along, take care of the baby and the dog.
Goldberg enrolled in a writing class, and one day his professor called him into the office to discuss a script he had written.
And he said, well, I don't want you in this class. He said, you're a writer. He said, I have nothing to teach you, and I don't want to get in the way. It's a unique voice, it's compelling, and I just think you can be a writer. You are a writer.
With the support of his professor, Goldberg left school and set off to make his way in the world of scripted comedy. Over the next 7 years, he found steady work in Hollywood, penning scripts for The Bob Newhart Show and producing the short-lived Tony Randall Show. Then, in 1981, at the age of 36, he formed his own company, Ubu Productions, named for his black lab. A fateful discussion with two friends helped Goldberg conceive an idea for one of the company's first projects.
And they were kind of talking to me about, what about doing a show about your history with Diana and, you know, the 60s, and that got me thinking about it, and I got kind of interested in trying to see if I could make that idea work. One of the things I was most interested in was in examining two people who've stayed together for a long time. And what do you do when, you know, you're two people, you're still very physically attracted to each other, but you have kids, and also giving your kids license to widen the lanes of communication. So you're not saying to these kids, because I said so, you know, you've empowered these kids. I once said to my wife, to Diana, if we empowered our kids anymore, they would make us move out. And so it was interesting to see, to kind of start to examine that family dynamic.
Goldberg began writing a script, and one day, while at a friend's house, stumbled on the idea for Alex Keaton, the only son of the fictional family he was creating.
What became this successful hook, if you will, came from me watching my friends and their kids and watching our own kids, where you've had these 60s more or less radical people, or certainly on that side of it. And now we're growing these unbelievably intelligent, thoughtful, sweet, but really conservative kids. And I was sitting with my friend Jim Bellows, who was editor of the Herald Examiner, and his son Michael was there one day, and he comes in dressed up, you know, and we're in shorts and ripped shirts, and go, "Where are you going, Michael?" He goes, Young Republicans meeting, you know. And I just thought something's happening there.
Goldberg had hit on a cultural divide that was beginning to define the 1980s.
You had this emerging generation of kids who now seem to sort of embody all that these people's parents used to embody. It's as though conservatism and respect for authority and ambition had skipped a generation.
It came so easily, which is always a good sign. I mean, I knew who the parents were, and then I just kind of had this feeling about who the kids were.
Goldberg first pitched his script, dubbed Family Ties, to executives at CBS.
They had a belief that family comedy was dead, and they just had no belief in this show or these characters.
Goldberg moved on and sent the script to Brandon Tartikoff, then head of NBC's entertainment division.
When Family Ties gets brought to NBC, NBC is a train wreck. I mean, it is in third place. It's got no prospects. Cable is just kicking in and beginning to eat away at ratings. They're in really sorry shape, and they are desperate for a few good ideas.
The original idea was more like a 1-hour comedy drama. And it was actually Brandon Tartikoff's idea to take that and make it a half-hour show. He said, I just see this as a family comedy in front of an audience, and that's what I want to do.
Gary David Goldberg had sold the idea for a pilot to NBC. But now, he was faced with the challenge of finding actors who could breathe life into the characters on the page. First up was the character Elise Keaton, the self-employed architect and mother of 3, who was loosely based on Goldberg's wife, Diana.
I had in mind, for the part of Elise, Meredith Baxter, because I'd always had a crush on her.
Baxter had won hearts with starring roles on 70s hits like Bridget Loves Bernie and Family.
I had not heard anything about the script, but Gary and Diana had dinner at my house.
And we just hit it off, and I just always thought she was great.
And then sometime later, an offer came to me, so I did not audition for it. I just ate it up immediately. I loved it. It was so funny. I loved the humor on the page. That caught me first. And this woman had 3 kids. Well, I had 3 kids at that time, so I thought, okay, well, I know how to do this. There's no secrets here. So I just thought that I was right for it.
She brought a certain warmth and intelligence and affection to that character that I thought Elise had to have. So we started there.
Next up were the Keaton girls. Child actress Tina Yothers, who had appeared alongside Albert Finney in Shoot the Moon, was chosen for Jennifer. And newcomer Justine Bateman nabbed the role of 15-year-old Mallory.
The Alex character was a little more complicated. I was very fortunate. I was working with a casting director, Judith Weiner, who was really a genius casting director. Judith, God bless her, had found this young boy, just graduated from high school in New York, hadn't done anything yet, put him on tape, and I said, well, that's the guy.
The guy was Matthew Broderick.
He had all the charm that he's always had. And we were in the process of trying to make a deal when he pulled out. And I think he became very aware of maybe opportunities that were happening on the East Coast. His father, unfortunately, was not well then. And he just was not ready to come to California and do a pilot.
With Broderick out of the mix, Goldberg needed to find a new Alex. But the next actor who read for the role did not impress him one bit.
And I said, I know he's not the guy.
By early 1982, producer Gary Goldberg had almost finished casting the pilot for his sitcom Family Ties. But his first choice for Alex Keaton, Matthew Broderick, had turned him down.
And so that was a little heartbreaking at the time, and I was in deep denial and depression.
Convinced he had lost his Alex Keaton, but eager to fill the role, Goldberg was persuaded by casting director Judith Weiner to bring in a struggling Canadian actor named Michael Fox. Fox had so far done only a few bit parts on Canadian television.
He left, and I said to Judith, well, I thought he was okay, you know, nothing special. And Judith said, you just made the biggest mistake. This is the guy. I've seen 8,000. This is the guy. You've made a terrible mistake. And I said, Judith, come on, I created the character. I think I have an idea, and I don't think it's Michael Fox. She said, fine, but she was not happy. And she kept bringing in more people, and every 2 days she would say, why don't you see Michael Fox again? And I would say, no, because he's not the guy.
Casting director Judith Weiner wasn't alone in thinking that Fox was right for the part.
I just took one look and I went, that's Alex. He is perfect. He's the guy.
But Goldberg could not be swayed. Depressed and dejected, he continued the search for Alex Keaton.
And the charade went on for a month or so. And then this other show that we were doing with Jim Naughton and George Wendt opened, and they had a preview in Washington, D.C., and it really screened well. And everyone was complimenting the cast that Judith had put together. And so I called her to say, I just want you to know how much everyone loves your cast, and thank you for all that work, and I love you, and I'm completely, had 18 margaritas at this point, you know. And she said, you're in a good mood. I said, I'm in a great mood. You know, she said, will you do me a favor? I said, anything. She said, when you come back, will you see Michael Fox again? And I said, I will, Judith, but just for you, because I know he's not the guy.
Though convinced he was wasting his time, Goldberg called Michael J. Fox back for a second audition.
And Judith, I guess, had spoken to Mike a little bit about some of the concerns I had in the original reading. Mike comes back in, and he reads, and he's Mike, and it's brilliant. And he leaves, and I turned to Judith, and I said, I mean, this guy's great. Why didn't you tell me about him?
Goldberg had finally cast the part of Alex, but still needed to find an integral member of the cast, the father, public TV station manager Stephen Keaton.
The hardest character for us was Stephen Keaton. I don't know if it was because it was based on me, or we just couldn't find the guy that had the strength to be vulnerable. Because I wanted a different kind of father. I wanted a father who didn't rule out of fear, who didn't control that way.
A stage actor in the New York City theater scene named Michael Gross was given a script.
The pilot had to do with an exclusive country club that would not allow Jews, blacks, things like this. So already they were tackling an issue in Family Ties. And so I thought, well, this is worth saying. It looks interesting. I went in there, they put this audition on tape.
That tape was quickly shuttled to Los Angeles and into the hands of Gary and his 12-year-old daughter, Shauna.
I would show everything to the kids, and Shauna said, oh, I like him, Daddy. I just like him. And so Michael Gross always goes, I thank you, Shauna, whenever he sees her.
Yes, I owe her for this job. She still takes 10% of whatever I make.
But the fact is, there was just something so genuinely likable about this man. And I just thought, let's start with that. That's you have to have that.
The first impressions were very good. Apart from his driving, he almost got me killed on the way to one of our first meetings with the network executives.
I was driving Michael over to the meeting with Brandon, and I was so intent, and I must have been in the Brooklyn way just gesturing with both hands, and I make a U-turn, and like 18 cars screech, and I ended up going up on the sidewalk. I thought, oh, this would be so bad we get killed on the way to see Brandon.
I'm thankful to this day that I'm not a statistic, and I just hope somebody else is driving for him these days.
Family Ties now had its cast, and before long, the Keatons had their first impressions of one another.
Well, I remember I told Michael Gross he needed a tan. I think I looked at Fox and I thought, he's too old to be my son. I looked at Justine Bateman. To me, because of her beautiful dark hair and olive complexion, I thought, she is obviously an adopted child. There's no way she came from these parents. But the sweet thing about television is that you can just say, okay, this is the family. You go, okay, we accept that.
What happened was we shot the pilot, and it was one of those nights where everything went great. Just everything went great. We did it in front of a live audience, and they loved that relationship within that family. Everybody worked the way we hoped they would. And we put the piece together, and we showed it to NBC, and they liked it. They have one note: we like the show, we're ready to pick it up, we want you to replace Michael Fox. And I thought, well, what? That's crazy. I mean, didn't you see the pilot? Are you responding to the pilot you liked? He's the guy.
NBC exec Brandon Tartikoff put it bluntly.
Brandon said, is this the kind of face that's going to be on a lunchbox? I go, geez, Brandon, I don't know. Maybe a thermos? I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't know how you write for that the guy's going to be on a lunchbox.
But Goldberg stuck to his guns.
And ultimately said, I'm not going to do that. It would be crazy. I just can't do that. So either put the show on with Michael or don't put it on. And I don't even mean it aggressively. It's just not, I wouldn't know who I was if I had replaced this boy. And that was it.
Goldberg prevailed, and Family Ties was picked up for 13 episodes, with Michael J. Fox as Alex Keaton. But the direction of the show was about to drastically change.
Everything we believed turned out to be wrong. Everything that we started, this is what the show is, here's where it lives and dies, completely wrong.
By the spring of 1982, NBC had ordered 13 episodes of Family Ties. Show creator Gary Goldberg and his team of writers set out to tackle the challenge of mapping out the series.
Gary Goldberg originally thought he was writing the story of his life with his wife, Diana, and their hippie days and how they confront the real world, and he thought it was going to be a story about the parents.
But a funny thing happened as they started taping. It quickly became clear that focusing on the parents was not working.
The show we shot first, which really represented my deepest idea of what the show might be, was a really good script, and it was very cerebral and didn't really work. It was just too much. And we did a show about protesting nuclear arms, where the parents get arrested.
I know we are prisoners and you are the guard, but is this really necessary? I mean, it seems a little excessive. Humor me.
Also didn't work. And so a series of shows that were deep, in my mind, really our platform just died.
Two things happened to that program relatively early. I think it becomes clear that this isn't about the parents. This is about the kids. And most of all, it's about Alex P. Keaton.
Alex P. Keaton here.
Smooth, Alex.
Starring Michael J. Fox.
Ironically, the actor who almost didn't get a part in the show was quickly becoming the center of it. As Family Ties was taping its first season, the writers began to shift the focus from hippie parents Elise and Stephen Keaton to their son, the conservative charmer.
And so I thought, well, we all need to kind of discuss this. And we sat down and I said to Michael Gross and Meredith, this probably will not be the show exactly that you signed up to do. And it's actually probably not, for me, the show that I signed up to do. But I think it's going to be a good show. This may be a great show.
It wasn't lost on me what was happening. It was a period of ego adjustment for me. Because I was just going, wait a minute, that wasn't the plan. Things change. I had to be open to it.
Recognizing the originality of the new direction, Michael Gross was also open to the changes.
The most wonderful creation they had in that show, to me, the thing that diverged the most from any show before was the Alex Keaton character.
Well, how do I look?
Middle-aged.
And when a writer falls in love with your character, it's gold.
On Wednesday, September 22nd, 1982, Family Ties debuted on NBC. Over its first several episodes, it barely caused a ripple.
The first year Family Ties was on was a very tough year. NBC was really number 3, a big time. People were not watching NBC. Nothing was working.
But NBC execs had seen something special in the show. And they stuck with Family Ties despite middling numbers.
People who saw the show loved it. So the problem really didn't seem to be what we were doing. It was that we couldn't get people to watch what we were doing. So I think ultimately what tipped it in our favor was that really high favorability of people who had become viewers. And those people were staying with us. So now a question, could we build on that?
If Family Ties couldn't increase viewership, it was destined to be canceled, like so many other average sitcoms. But NBC executive Brandon Tartikoff wanted it to work and offered some valuable advice.
He said, what you have to do to make a television show about a family successful is, people want to see themselves in that family. On some level, people have to want to be a part of that family. And then he said, and the third thing, if you can get this, you really have a deep and strong hook connection with the American audience, is if people now start watching thinking, well, I'm going to learn how to be a better family.
Goldberg took the advice to heart, and he and his writing team started creating scripts that aimed to be both funny and relatable.
People learned something from it. There was always a great lesson taught, but it was a lesson that was sugar-coated with laughter. So you were almost unaware that you were getting an education.
Almost everybody has a family, and we all want our families to be better, to, the interactions to be smoother, and we watch something like that in an instructive kind of way, too. Say, look, how are they doing it?
As time went on, I think Meredith and I were held up as paragons of American parenthood. And I had to keep reminding people, look, I don't write this. I'm just interpreting it. I'm having as much trouble as you are at home finding, because people don't write my script when I leave this set. When I leave the Paramount lot, I have to go home and improvise.
One of the many episodes from Family Ties' second season that families identified with was a show in which 18-year-old Alex attempts to prove his independence from his mother.
I remember Meredith coming in talking one time about the changes with her son, and we ended up using that in a show called Birthday Boy, which Michael Whitehorn wrote, which was one of our best shows, where Alex is 18, and he's basically, I'm a man, but to your mother, you're never a man. And so there was a built-in conflict that everyone would recognize.
Sure, this is your house, and as long as it's your house, I gotta live by your rules. Well, that used to be true. Not anymore, Mom. I'm an adult now. I got 18 years under this belt.
And it was 11 minutes just with Meredith and Michael Fox.
I do not enjoy being made to feel like an intrusion and an annoyance in my own son's life.
I remember from that little scene in the kitchen about the feeling that I don't exist just to serve you. To make your sandwiches, pack your lunch, send you off to school. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in me.
I mean, I think of you as my mother, not as a person. You know what I mean.
Surprise, Alex. I am a real person, flesh and blood, real feelings.
We saw things that night that we had never seen before. It was, I still can feel the hair going up on the back of my head because they just were like, it was important to both of them to say what they were saying. And you could just see where that resonated for people who were going through that.
Season 2 also saw the return of a young up-and-coming actor named Tom Hanks, who had made a guest appearance in Season 1.
These were out on a curb, and it's a good thing I happened by, because two guys in a truck were trying to make off with him.
Well, the minute he comes, Mike Fox goes crazy. He just recognized in this guy a kindred spirit. He goes, just put me in a scene with him. Give him all the jokes. I don't care. Tie my hands. I don't care. I don't even have to speak. Can I be in a scene with him alone? Please, please, just me and him,
You think I am drunk? Let me tell you something, buddy. I'm drunk.
Hank's turn as alcoholic Uncle Ned saw Family Ties move from tackling interpersonal family dynamics to heftier topics.
Why don't you just come upstairs, sleep it off?
I'm gonna go out.
Taxi! Pull yourself together.
Get out of here, you punk! Just get out of here!
Two actors just played that scene, and no one even, really, when you think of who they were going to become, and here they are, no one really was sure who they were yet. That was one of the best scenes I've ever seen.
In 1984, as Season 2 of Family Ties came to a close, Michael J. Fox had become a breakout star.
It becomes clear that Michael J. Fox is brilliant sitcom actor. I mean, this guy has got timing that is breathtaking. Michael J. Fox becomes a superstar.
The combination of Michael Fox, the energy, what he brought to that, a well-written and interesting, almost revolutionary kind of role, what he brought to it, it was a marvelous, marvelous marriage.
With a budding star and a growing audience, Family Ties was beginning to find its legs. But a time-traveling blockbuster film would threaten the show's future.
People said, why are you letting him do this movie? You didn't have to let him do it. And I thought, wow, I don't know, did I make a terrible mistake?
In the summer of 1984, as Michael J. Fox's profile grew and Family Ties' audience increased, the cast and crew were eager to deliver their third season to NBC. But out of the blue, executive Brandon Tartikoff threw them a curveball.
Brandon called and said, we're moving you behind the Bill Cosby Show. And I was crazed because I thought, we're just now making a home for ourselves, you know, and what are you saying? We're going to be, this guy's failed in 3 shows, he's doing Jell-O commercials, you know, I mean, this isn't going to work, this makes no sense. And Brandon said, well, look, I'm going to send you the pilot, and then call me. And then he sent me the pilot, and I just thought it was actually the best television show I'd ever seen. And I called Brandon, I thanked him, and I started to look for beachfront property in Hawaii.
The Cosby Show comes on, and it is a smash hit. The Cosby Show turns around NBC, turns around the sitcom, reintroduces the family to, I mean, it changes everything. And no better thing could happen to your show than to be put on after a hit of that magnitude.
Positioned behind The Cosby Show on Thursday nights, Family Ties exploded in the ratings, jumping from the 20th to the 5th highest-rated show on television.
It was almost impossible to absorb because we used to shoot the show live Friday nights, and all of a sudden I'm driving down Gower Street to the studio one day, and there's a line of people, and they'd camped out, and they're in beach chairs, going way back, and I stopped the guard. I said, what's that for? He goes, they're waiting for your show. So people had actually camped out, and it was really unbelievably exciting, and because we did the show live, you'd have this interaction with this audience that was now coming primed to have a great time.
In addition to the fervent live audiences, families at home were carving time out of their Thursday nights to watch and study the Keatons.
To this day, I still have people who say, yours was the last show we watched in which we all sat down together as a family. They were getting something, not only it was funny, but had some substance to it.
In 1985, as the show prepared for its 4th season, Goldberg's friend Steven Spielberg called with a request. Spielberg wanted Michael J. Fox in a blockbuster movie he was producing.
Michael Fox was the first choice for Back to the Future, but they were very locked into their shooting schedule, which made it impossible, and we had to say we couldn't do it.
But just a few months later, Spielberg came calling a second time.
And I instinctively said yes at that point because I thought we would make it work, and we had worked out a schedule now where he would be with us and with them in the evening. We were far enough along in our season that we could accommodate these little hiatuses of Alex Keaton. There were a couple of people who I really respect who said, why are you letting him do this movie? You didn't have to let him do it. And now this kid's going to become a big movie star off of this, and he's going to leave. And I thought, wow, I don't know, did I make a terrible mistake? And I said to Diana, did I make a terrible mistake? And she said, no, they don't know Michael, and he would never do that.
Shooting Family Ties and Back to the Future at the same time was a logistical nightmare and took its toll on the young star.
He was unbelievably exhausted. He was shooting Ties during the day, Back to the Future at night, and would roll in late the next day for our show.
We'd give him a later call to come into the set so that we'd do all the other rehearsals without him. We'd have a stand-in who was a pretty good actor who could do the lines and at least get it going, and they could work out the blocking.
It definitely put an extra strain on the show on everybody, but everybody decided we were going to make it work.
Not long after Michael J. Fox finished Back to the Future, Gary Goldberg learned that the NBC sitcom Facts of Life had shot a movie in Paris. However irrational, he wanted in on a trip to Europe too.
I don't know, it was really me at my stupidest, most jealous, you know, for no reason. I called Brandon. I said, if they go to Paris, we're going to go to Europe and make a movie too. He said, great. I go, and we're going to go somewhere where I speak the language. We're going to London. He said, be my guest, And then we were off and did the worst TV movie ever made, I think.
Even the writers, Gary's the first one to say, this was awful, this was a terrible mistake. We just, oh God, it was bad.
It just made no sense from beginning to end, and it was such a vanity project on my part that I think we paid for it by having a terrible time and turning out a terrible product. It was just a brutal experience, and it was very painful.
The London experience turned out to be especially painful for Michael J. Fox. When Back to the Future opened in the United States, he was still shooting Family Ties across the pond.
We couldn't finish our movie in time to get Mike to New York for the premiere. So we're actually shooting one of the stupidest scenes in this movie anyway, which involves Mike being locked in a closet with a bunch of old English actors in their underwear. At the same time that we're getting these telegrams, Mike, come to New York, studio's abuzz, highest grossing movie ever. I still feel bad that Mike wasn't able to be there for all that.
Back to the Future was the biggest hit of the summer, and Michael J. Fox was now a bona fide movie star. The popularity of Family Ties would also only continue to surge, and before too long, the professional would become personal. In 1985, as Season 4 of Family Ties hit the airwaves, the show was hitting its stride, and the cast and crew were becoming a real family.
Everybody loved everybody. It was a big, huggy group, actually.
Over the years, the show had seen its fair share of recurring characters, like next-door neighbor Skippy. It had seen the addition of a new Keaton, Baby Andrew, in Season 3. Now in Season 4, producers welcomed 2 new characters to spice up the dynamic.
Well, we wanted to add a new element for Mike, who's in college now, which is basically the first serious girlfriend as a young man, And we thought, well, we want it to be the opposite of who he would ever think he would fall in love with, to show that even Alex Keaton, the young master of the universe, is powerless in this sphere, as we all are.
New Yorker Tracy Pollan nailed her audition and captured the role of Ellen Reed.
It was nothing, really. I mean, I was there and everything, and I knew you liked art.
It was still very sweet, thank you.
No, don't worry about it. It was a couple of bucks.
Even so, it was very sweet. Now shut up.
I was quite moved by those Tracy Pollan episodes. That relationship really developed. Yes, it was schmaltzy. Yes, it was saccharine and all of that. But this is a sitcom. It's called Family Ties. That's part of what it does. And I think it did it really nicely.
Before long, Alex and Ellen's on-screen love affair was happening off-screen with Michael and Tracy as well.
I see nothing. I am the most obtuse person on earth, evidently.
I said to myself, if Alex is in the train station when I get off, I'm not going to marry Dennis.
But there was something, because that night, after we did film that scene where Mike drives through the night and comes and sees her at the train station, that night we're driving home, and Diana said, I think there might be something going on between Michael Fox and Tracy Pollan. And I pull over to the side, and I go, this is what's wrong. Because, no, I said, I'm watching them every day. I said, these are 2 gifted actors. They're playing a part, and you, American public, you read into all this thing, and you have to create this fantasy. And it's an insult to their craft and their ability, And she looks at me, she goes, there's something going on, drive the car. Cut to 25 years later, 4 kids and a whole world, and she turns out to be the most wonderful partner you could ask for.
It's amazing how when 2 people are destined to be together, how their lives intertwine eventually and it comes together.
While Alex and Ellen's relationship blossomed, Mallory soon snagged her own love interest, Nick, played by heartthrob Scott Valentine.
Nice to meet you, Nick. It's a pleasure having you here. Hey.
He turned out to be great for us on many reasons. Scott Valentine, extremely talented and sweet boy, because he now gave the parents just their nightmare. And that then opened up this whole area, especially for Stephen, to play off of Nick.
How about school? Did you go to school?
No.
Can you expand on that? Yeah, like when school's on, I'm not there.
Aside from Richard Nixon, Stephen Keaton had never hated anyone before. Stephen Keaton was unfailingly nice, kind, accepting of everyone, which, you know, to me made him a little boring. Nobody's that nice. The character of Nick gave me a focus for anger.
How can you sleep when you know she's out there in the middle of the night with him?
So that was a huge breakthrough for me because they gave me an emotion other than likability, you know, all accepting likability and caring. There was somebody he really loathed. And that dimension just meant so much to me as an actor.
Season 3 had seen Baby Andrew as a regular, but in the hiatus between seasons 4 and 5, the producers made a decision that flew in the face of reality.
I just thought, I can't go through another year of wheeling the baby on for 3 seconds, you know, and so we decided to just jump Andy a couple of years. And we did. And we had Brian Bonsall, who was great. It offered up now, again, this new area, which was the battle for Andrew's soul. You know, that we had another Alex. And one of the big laughs we got, and I knew we had done the right thing, which was they're in the kitchen, and Andy enters, just peeks, opens the kitchen door.
Alex, come quick. Go close out 4:15.
And he goes back out, and the audience is howling, and Mike's just standing there, and he turns to his parents and goes,
Thank you for having him.
And that was now a whole new element for us.
Over the course of season 5, Family Ties maintained its stranglehold as the #2 show in the country, right behind The Cosby Show. It also scooped up Emmys and Golden Globes. But it couldn't last.
By the time it got to its 6th and 7th season, it was beginning to show its age.
And just it was time to set everybody free and look back and say we did something that we'll always be very proud of.
When I learned close to the end of the 7th season that we would not come back for the 8th, it was a mixture of sadness and relief. It was both.
These are people that I love, people that I've worked with, certainly that I love more than anybody else that I've worked with. And to have an audience of people that have appreciated the show the way they have, I mean, that's all tough to leave.
In the summer of 1989, at the close of the decade it helped define, Family Ties was coming to an end.
What I liked about all our time together is when I was on the stage talking to those actors, those writers, everyone knew this was where we wanted to be. Creatively, we didn't have the passion anymore. We didn't have the fire anymore. And that was an uncomfortable feeling to be on that stage with any thought of, well, this isn't everything I want. You know, this isn't the only place I want to be.
Though many of those involved were ready to move on, the final taping was more difficult than anyone could have imagined.
We really put off writing it. And so the script didn't get written until late, and it wasn't good because everyone was, you know, resisting actually dealing with it. It was so Freudian, you know. Nobody wanted it to end, so we were never going to finish the script.
Oh, my God. You know, I think we were all running on high emotion that week, and the script that they gave us, I remember being heartsick. It was flat. It was awful. It didn't speak to what we all felt. I mean, I can feel it now that I was saying they've lost it. They missed it. They're not going to capture this at all. I personally was in despair over it and thought that we were going to go out on a nosedive. A total disappointment. It was just wrong, wrong, wrong.
After a week of rewrites, the cast showed up on shooting day.
We had a new script. And it was princely. It was just the one. And it said everything that I remember, that I said everything I wanted to say to each of these characters. You know, it was inspired. I just loved it and was so grateful to them. I thought it was the greatest testament to their caring for us, was them giving us this gift of this final show.
The final Family Ties episode aired on May 14th, 1989, and was the highest rated show for that week.
That was a nice validation.
I'm glad we quit when we did, because we quit at the top of our form. We left before we were asked to leave. We left on a good note, flying high, and that was nice. That was nice.
I just had to hold on to Mike. You know, it was like, it was just so poignant that that was the end, and that he was just right there. It was like, yeah, okay, we just held each other, and it was just enormously touching to be able to do it at that time, because it was just so powerful. That, okay, this is it. It's a big goodbye.
Family Ties in particular was really the last long-running, really good show that was truly made for anybody.
And we were popular because kids, in a lot of ways, ran to that show. In some ways, parents who thought, gee, the Keatons had it right. I wish I could do it like that.
In the end, Family Ties is the end of a line, and it's a really nice show to have representing the end of that line.
Since the end of Family Ties, members of the cast have scattered. They have grown up, moved on to other projects, started families, and left their lives as the Keatons behind them. But their years on Family Ties will remain magical and unparalleled.
I just remember how good it was overall. And sadly, in some ways, how much I took it for granted. I assumed that was normal.
And not everybody has great loving families like this. So to find one and have a whole bunch of strangers build this together is a rare, beautiful experience.
Really like having your extended family around all the time. My heart would start racing when I got near that Paramount lot with the excitement of what I'd be getting to do that day and, you know, who I'd be doing it with.
They were probably my happiest years acting. I can say that absolutely. I always love it when someone says, I loved you as Elise Keaton. I have to appreciate that because it reconfirms how important the show was to people.